In the middle of the storm, my Prince of Peace.
Hello everyone, welcome to Worship Connects with Mpho. This is a platform that God has given us to speak about being exposed as a worshiper, what it looks like, and how do we navigate this space as believers, and how do we become true worshipers, the ones that Jesus speaks about, who will worship Him in spirit and in truth. So I'm so grateful that you're able to join me again as we speak about these things and we become better worshipers before God. Today, I would like to talk about when my heart is overwhelmed. Being exposed is exactly that there are times when you are not feeling this presence of God, or you're not feeling so good, and you are just weighed down by life's happenings. And how do we as believers, as worshipers, navigate that space? So when my heart is overwhelmed, what do I do? The past 2 weeks personally have been quite hard for me, quite challenging. Work, just personal stuff that has been happening. And at times it's easier to worship God or to say great things and be in the presence of God when life is going all right. But when life is hard and it seems like it's one thing after another, after another, after another, and there's this heavy weight, we tend to lose our way, and we tend to be so inward focused that we don't pay attention to what we actually need. And so when my soul is overwhelmed, what do I do? I want to read a scripture from Psalms chapter 61. From verse 1, it says, "Hear my cry, O God, attend to my prayer. From the end of the earth I will cry to you. When my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For you have been a shelter for me and a strong tower from the enemy. I will abide in your tabernacle forever. I will trust in the shelter of your wings. For you, O God, have heard my vows. You have given me the heritage of those who fear your name. You will prolong the king's life, his years as many generations. He shall abide before God forever. Oh, prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him. So I will sing praise to your name forever, that I may daily perform my vows." David here is crying out to God because his soul is so overwhelmed. He is so overwhelmed by life that he goes out and he goes to God and he says, "Hear my cry, O God, attend to my prayer," because he was so overwhelmed with life. So one of the things, Bible characters, I absolutely love David. I love David. I've said it so many times. People who know me know that David is my guy, man. To the extent that I will say that if David was alive in this day and age, if I was alive, I'd be like, dude, marry me. Like, this is how much I love David, you guys. When I get to heaven, I'm going to be that groupie like, "Hey, David, it's me. I've been speaking about you. I'm that girl. Remember me. I love David. And the reason why I love David is because David is honest, man. David is honest about his feelings. David is real. And he's just like, my mind, when I think about David, I just think that he's just hot, man. So forgive me, but David is the guy. He's the guy. He's the guy. He's that heel. He's that guy, right? So David comes to God. I love how David was not afraid to come before God and cry out. I love how David was not afraid to share his feelings. You know, there were times when David was at the peak of his life and he would share about his joys, about his happiness. You know, he'd boast about it before God. But there were times when David's life was really, really hard. And I'm just amazed at how in tune he was with what was happening in his life and how he could articulate his emotions before God. And that for me has to be the most fascinating thing about this man. And this is why I love him so much, because he just poured out his heart to God. It didn't matter what was happening. He knew how to pour out his heart. Before David became king, he knew how to pour out his heart. When he became king, he still continued. He was consistent in how he approached God. You know, before he became king, before he was anointed as king, he was considered as a nobody in his family. And in his state of being a nobody, David still went and cried out to God. He would have hymns, he would have times with God. When he was anointed as king, he still continued. Now David becomes anointed, and before he even takes the position as king, he still suffers a lot, right? He's rejected. There are plots against him. His life becomes wild. And he pours out his heart to God because he keeps asking God, why do they hate me? What have I done? So we realize that David had a lot of things going on in his life. And throughout his life's journey, he could come to God. And we also recognize that he was overwhelmed by emotions. He was overwhelmed by the weight of his life and the things that were happening. It was war. It was plots against him. If it was not Saul plotting against him, it was his own son. So his life was dramatic, you know, and he made a choice that when his heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. He recognized that it's so easy to be inward focused. He realized that it's so easy to be so overwhelmed that you don't realize that there is a rock that is higher. It's so easy to be consumed by your life. It's so easy to be consumed by the problems that you're having. And the reality is that when you're going through stuff, you're going through it. You know, when life is happening to us, it really, really happening. Like it's loud, and it requires your attention. Life requires your attention, and especially when it's hard. It requires you to make hard decisions. It requires you to feel. There's just this demand. And so it's easy to be so consumed by what you're experiencing. It's easier actually to be consumed, to face it and feel like, why is this my life? So many times I've experienced this feeling of, what have I done to deserve such treatment? What have I done for my life to just not work out the way I had planned? Or when I have unanswered prayers, I feel like God has not answered me. And it's just hard. And I'm just dealing with the emotions of disappointment, dealing with the feelings of rejection, you know. And it feels like when something bad happens, it attracts more. It's like you're not getting just time to just breathe. And so you become so consumed by these things that you are feeling, which are genuine. But what do we do when we are overwhelmed by our emotions? What do we do when we are overwhelmed by life's happening? What is that rock that is higher than you? Where do you run to when there's no place to run? Where is your hiding place? He says here, I will trust in the shelter of your wings. He will trust. It doesn't mean that it looks safe, but he will trust. Where is your trust when your life is happening? Because reality is life happens to all of us. We all experience a slump. We all experience heaviness. We all experience, we lose people that we love. We get so disappointed. What happens when life is not working out the way that you had hoped? What happens when the people that you have trusted disappoint you? What happens when the people that you have given yourself to, or the person that you have given yourself to, stabs you in the back? Where's your hiding place? Where's your hiding place? Where is it that you find rest? Some people find rest in different things. People find rest in going out. They hide, So some people will always want to go out, want to be around people because it's a hiding place. They feel safer around crowds of people. Some people, if you're anything like me, I love being alone, right? I love being in my bedroom. I love being in my own space. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to hear anybody else's voice. I can consume TV, like I can binge on series because it's a great hiding place and I can hide in my own thoughts. So I can imagine all sorts of things. It can become a hiding place. Some people are safe when they're drinking. And so you'll find that all they want to do is go out and drink as much as they can so that they don't have to think about their lives. Some people will say that their hiding place or they feel safe when there's music. So I love music, right? And I love singing. And so at times it's just in singing and I'm singing and I'm singing and I don't have to be present in my life. I can imagine a life outside of mine, or I can hide from this life of mine and just watch somebody else's life. All of these things are temporary. All of these things are not a fix because you still have to face it. Once you are sober, you still need to deal with the fact that you've lost your job. Once you are sober, you still need to face the fact that you have lost someone that you love. Once you have binged all the series that you can binge, the reality still hits that your life does not look like what you had hoped for it to be. After doing all of these things, after music, after hanging out, all of these things end. All of it. You can party all you want, but there comes a point where it all ends, where people have to do their lives and you are faced with yourself. What do you do when you are faced with yourself? All of these other things, as I've said, are temporal fixes. All of these things are not the real deal. And so what blesses me here about David is that he recognized that in the happenings of life, because they happen, when his heart is overwhelmed, there needs to be a higher place. When your heart is troubled, when you are going through the most in life, there needs to be a higher place. In these past 2 weeks where my life has been extra, when I've been in my fields, I've been feeling a lot. I've been overwhelmed by my own emotions. I've been overwhelmed by fear. I've been overwhelmed by insecurities. I've been overwhelmed by what's next, God? What's next? Because it's an end of something in my life. And unfortunately, it's always easy to go to what you know. And for me, the safest place is locking myself, staying away from people and being in my room. And I know this. I've been alive long enough to know that this doesn't work. But it seems like we're disillusioned in thinking that this is comfort, but it isn't. And I've come to realize that until I go to the rock that is higher, I will never be okay. I will never be able to navigate a hard space because I am focusing on myself. I am self-soothing. Self-soothing only works for a moment. It's a temporal fix. But God has made a way. God has given us a place that is higher. And so when David says this, that when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. For you have been a shelter for me, a strong tower from the enemy. He's experienced God. He's experienced God as shelter. Shelter, not because he's running away from his problems, but shelter because this is protection. He's experienced that in abiding in the house of the Lord, in abiding in the presence of God, this is where it is safer. This is where even when life is happening, you get solution. This is where you get comfort. This is where you get healing. This is where you get solve for things that you did not see how to get out of. So when your heart is overwhelmed, where do you run to? When your heart is overwhelmed, who do you talk to? Who do you talk to? Psalms, I want to read from Psalm 73, from verse 25. Whom have I in heaven but you? And there is none upon earth that I desire besides you. My flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. My flesh and my heart fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. My strength fails me. I get tired. I get weary. I get weak. My flesh fails me. When you're overwhelmed with life's happenings, when things become too much, your flesh tells you that life has become too much. This comes in forms of being sick. Sometimes people have flu and it just doesn't end. Not because they are unhealthy, but because they are so weary. People get sick because they are so weary. One of the telltales that I'm not doing well is migraines, right? As soon as I have migraines, the people that know me know that something is bothering me. And that's not how to live. So when your heart fails you, when your strength fails you, where do you run to? When my heart is overwhelmed, Lord, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. David here is not disputing the fact that life gets hard. David here is not ignoring the fact that things get a lot. He's not even washing that down. He's not even trying to say, oh, I praise you, God. No. He's saying, my heart is overwhelmed. I need strength. I am weary. It's a lot, God. It's a lot, God. It's a lot. But when my heart is overwhelmed, lead me to the rock that is higher. Friends, God is that rock that is higher. A life of a worshiper is knowing that it's not enough to focus on yourself. Actually focusing on your problems and trying to find solve by yourself will not take away. God is the strength of my life. God is the one that is able to heal. God is the one that I run to when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the rock that is higher. When your heart is overwhelmed, when you want to give up, when you feel like you can't do this anymore, when it is a lot, ask Him, Lord, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. When nothing is working out, when your heart breaks and it's always just breaking, ask God, Lord, lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Help me to trust. Help me to trust you. A worshiper does not have it all figured out, but a worshiper knows that God is the rock that is higher. He is the solid foundation. He is the sure, firm foundation. He is the rock, solid rock. And so, when my heart is overwhelmed, when I am overburdened by my life, Lord, I look up to you. Please lead me to the rock that is higher than I. Be blessed, Jesus.